The Bugattis were a family of artistic instincts. Each person born into the name made something that looked beautiful and was carefully detailed in many ways. It starts with Carlo, the father. Born in the mid-19th century in Milan, he was a famous furniture decorator and designer. The work he made was described as art. Here's some of the work that he made. For example, this wooden furniture, very well detailed, very awesome work. He did an amazing job on styling them. And then came the two successors. Carlo tried as best he could to replicate this artistic instinct into his two sons, Rembrandt and Ettore. So, Rembrandt mastered art perfectly by making very carefully detailed sculptures of wild mammals. They were absolutely beautiful and some of the finest pieces of art in the world for the time. So, what we have here is a few of the works he made, like sculptures of tigers, camels, and lions, and there are many. He made many of them, and they were very, very carefully detailed. It seems that with every generation comes better artistic instincts. And of course, Ettore. His idea was to make rolling sculpture, in other words, cars. He began in Molsheim in 1910, where Bugatti still reside today. And there he started working on some of the most artistic cars ever made. There is his logo, Ettore Bugatti, with the Bugatti's official logo. After spending many years on the drawing board, one of his ideas became a reality. The Type 35, a reusable Grand Prix car, first used at the French Grand Prix of 1924 for a test run, then put on sale in 1925. With the help of a tremendous victory at the Targa Florio, everybody instantly saw the potential of this machine, including the person we will be talking about later. So, it was probably an amazing car, as I will show you. It was to become the greatest racing car, if not the greatest automobile of all time. It would be victorious in 110 Grand Prix races and over 200 hill climbs, and 670 units were sold. The official Bugatti works team used it until 1930. And on the left is a painting of the legendary Bugatti that was propelled to victory at the Targa Florio 5 years in a row. It won the Targa Florio 5 years, and they didn't stop using it until they lost it. And in the middle is a picture of the Bugatti Type 35 dominating at Monte Carlo. And here are some Bugattis nearby a barn, just sitting there, and they all belong to one owner. And it was succeeded by the Type 51, the Type 54, and the Type 59. In 1937, however, due to the Germans, Ettore and his artistic son Jean withdrew from GP Grand Prix racing to turn to sports car racing. It was in that position where, in their dying breath, they took Le Mans in 1939, as well as 1937, and made arguably the most beautiful car in the world, the Type 57. On the right is the car they ended up making. Styled by Ettore Bugatti himself, it is an absolutely beautiful creation. Nothing can ever come close in terms of detail and precision and there is the car that propelled Pierre Veyron and Jean-Pierre Emile to victory in Bugatti's last great hurrah. After the war, however, the Bugatti family was in a crisis. The car company was dangerously close to oblivion. Jean Bugatti, who is Ettore's son, was killed testing a Bugatti sports car before the war, and Carlo and Rembrandt's bloodlines failed, as did Ettore's in 1948. It led to their disappearance in 1962, and they were thought to be gone forever. In recent years, however, entrepreneur Romano Artioli revived the Bugatti company in 1989 as an Italian car maker, just like where the Bugatti family originally came from. And then began the kind of Bugatti that was not based upon art, but based upon records. So in 1992, Romano Artioli brought the Bugatti EB110, named after Ettore Bugatti himself. And for a year, it was the world's fastest production car. It is a disgraceful car, in my opinion, because it's not artistic. It's based on records, which is the moral of the story we'll be seeing later on. After some time being Italians, Volkswagen came along and returned them to Molsheim. It was then that, with the help of Audi and Bentley, Bugatti created the world-renowned Veyron, named in honor of the racing driver who won the Le Mans race in 1939. So, there we have the Audi Rosemeyer, named after legendary Grand Prix driver Bernd Rosemeyer. That was the original concept, and another concept developed by one of Bugatti's brothers, Bentley, the Hunaudier, named after a famous straight at the La Sarthe circuit. It just led to the Bugatti Veyron. Originally meant to be the fastest production car in the world, doing 253 miles per hour, Bugatti then made special edition ones, such as the Centenaire Silva cars, named after their heroes like Achille Varzi and Bartolomeo Costantini. Bartolomeo Costantini was the man who proved how successful Bugatti could be, as their driver in the mid-1920s and then becoming the team manager up until 1935. And Achille Varzi was a fantastic driver. Fast, smooth, and showed how great he can be racing for the French. And then came the Supersport, capable of 267 miles per hour, and the Grand Sport Vitesse, and Les Légendes de Bugatti series. They named special Veyrons after people like Rembrandt Bugatti and the heroic Jean-Pierre Wimille. This, on the left, is the brown Rembrandt Bugatti, named in honor of Ettore Bugatti's brother. It does possess a bit of a quality of the kind of animal sculptures he made, and in the middle is Jean-Pierre Wimille, who is Bugatti's pre-war hero, was their only hope, and he gave them outstanding victories, and the Supersport, as you probably all know. And of course, all good things come to an end. This year, the 450th Veyron, La Finale, in a rich red coat of paint, was sold to an Arab man who is adding it to his collection. This means it's about time to turn to the next page in Bugatti's treasured history. What will they do next? Another fast car? A travel back in time to the 1920s, maybe? What will they do? So they constructed the Type 35, the Type 37, then the EB110, the Veyron. What is next? Is it time to turn the page? I think now's about the time. So here we begin the next page in Bugatti's history, on Johannes Lacroix. I will tell you what they are doing now. After the release of the Supersport, Volkswagen wanted to go even faster. After all, the record that the Veyron once held is broken by the Americans and the Swedish. And For their revenge, they will now make the Bugatti Chiron. And here we have a few pictures of it. At least the pictures available to me at the time. On the left, we have the front. In the middle, we have the back of it. And on the right, we have the entire car. Yeah, so this is what that is, and I'm going to explain what the namesake is now, and I will do a full biography on it too. Starting now. Stage 1 of this video, which is Stage 1 of this video, full biography of the namesake. As you might have guessed, the Chiron is the official replacement for the Bugatti Veyron. It is a 1,500 horsepower monster capable of reaching over 280 miles per hour. The namesake for this one, however, is not an obscure racing driver otherwise unknown. This car is named after the legendary Monegasque racing driver Louis Chiron, who was once world-renowned. It is incredible to think that one of the greatest racing drivers in history can come from the tiny little principality of Monte Carlo. Chiron was born there in 1899, and as a schoolboy in pre-World War I years, he fell in love with cars. He had seen Georges Boileau take a triumphant victory over Sunbeam in the 1912 Grand Prix with his six-wheeler, and that inspired his hobby. There's Chiron in the crowd. I want one of those when I grow up. Chiron always loved victory, and he loved cars too. Just like others similar to his age, he gained experience driving during the First World War. After that, however, he must have been considered lucky. For the 1919, he was only 20. He chauffeured the great Marechal Foch. Now, I might be as puzzled as you are about this man, but he was a celebrity at the time, a huge, big celebrity. And the idea of, like, a 20-year-old chauffeuring him around is just astonishing. He lived a luxurious lifestyle in his early 20s, working at the Hotel de Paris in Monte Carlo, which is one of Europe's most beautiful places. The Riviera there on the right. That is the kind of place Louis Chiron grew up in. And some of the highest known athletes. Louis Chiron was greeted every morning with legends staying at the... So here's one of Chiron's quotes. "Morning, Fili Schnazzaro. How can I help you?" Fili Schnazzaro was a legend from before the First World War. And yeah, that's what that is. Monsieur Chiron earned enough money to buy a Brescia Bugatti in 1923. Sufficient racing equipment for local races. He didn't have much success with this in his early years, however. So, Louis Chiron went to his local Bugatti dealer, went to his local car dealer to see that there was a Brescia Bugatti offered for a cheap bargain, and he picked it up because he could afford it. And he just goes, "My time is finally here!" Or is it? Chiron barely does anything, nobody knows who he is. While the great legends like Albert Devo press on. This all changed with a brilliant victory at the Comminges Grand Prix 1926, with a Bugatti Type 35 he purchased. This gave him enough funding to be the recipient of the first supercharged Grand Prix car Bugatti ever produced. So he used the regular Type 35 at the Comminges Grand Prix. And with all the money he won from that, he purchased the most powerful Bugatti on sale. The first 150 horsepower Bugatti was the Type 35B. Now my career will actually take off. Let's see how it goes off then. This car would propel him to victory in the Provence Grand Prix, the race that brought south of France racers together. He finished 4th the year before. You know what? I should get out of the Riviera. Chiron had already... established himself as a formidable racer in his local area. And here he is at Miramas, dominating the Provence Grand Prix. And guess what he's decided to do? What Chiron decided to do was he decided to apply for Bugatti's reserve driver program. After seeing Chiron's artistic style, they hired him as their reserve. This meant Grand Épreuve and Targa Florio and the like. So, Louis Chiron arrives in Molsheim. Here we are, Molsheim. I hope they think I'm a good racer. So, yes, he is arriving at the time when Bugatti are hosting auditioning for reserve driver, and Louis Chiron was the best out of them all, and therefore he was hired, which confirmed the next 6 years of his life. The first he did for them was race in both Spanish Grand Épreuve races, the San Sebastian Grand Prix and the Spanish Grand Prix, finishing 4th at Spanish, and finishing 4th behind the Delage Army at Brooklands, England in October. So there was the Delage 155B, or 15S8, either one. It was the car that Robert Benoist brought to victory in all 4 Grand Épreuves that year, and Louis Chiron just followed him to 4th place. Someday I'll be on the podium at Monza. And since he was the leader of the Bugatti army in that race, they put him in position of junior driver alongside the experienced Frenchman Albert Divo. In this year, Chiron established himself as a fantastic racer. In the early part of his career, he was king of the Riviera, winning 3 local races. So the territory, I can sort of like, to give you an idea of how good he was at the time. On May 6, 1928, I can kind of like make a map of France as if it were Need for Speed Carbon here. The Grand Prix territory of France, territory control of France. So Louis Chiron has control over the entire south of France area, while Bugatti have control over the northeast area, while Delage, who still have control over a few areas, but they're disappearing rapidly, have control over their quarters, but that's it. And, Chiron will prove to be a stunning driver after this. This is just for starters. Alright. Part 2 of Louis Chiron's biography. So we left off with, he just won 3 local races, which meant he was king of the south of France. But could he be beneficial on the multinational circuit? He started with a 4th place finish in the Targa Florio, and then a victory at the Rome Grand Prix, which proved he was a top-notch racer. After that, he was victorious at Reims-Gouet in northern France, and both international Grand Épreuve races that were held in that year, in San Sebastian and Monza. Louis Chiron always dreamed to be an amazing racing driver, and he's now up in that position. He's just thinking in his mind, I can't believe my dream has come true. He won 7 races altogether in that season. Unbelievable. He was elected Driver of the Year for 1928, and this would put him in the rank of Bugatti's senior driver for 1929. But he was now facing steep opposition, with Tazio Nuvolari winning every other race, and Achille Varzi was on his way. So, Tazio Nuvolari, but keep in mind, this was the late 1920s, this was a time when they worked together. They were not rivals yet. And both of them came from the world of motorcycling. Nuvolari was already a motorcycling legend, and he had just ventured into cars. And Achille Varzi had also done the same thing, racing as Nuvolari's sidekick, but now branching off to race for Alfa Romeo. Time to move from 2 wheels to 4. And Varzi just goes, same here. Now Chiron has to defend from those 2. Chiron noticed that those 2 Italians both had races where the home crowd cheered them on, but he didn't have one. He decided he wanted his own race, and so Chiron had arranged meetings with Anthony Nage about organizing a Grand Prix race for his hometown, Monte Carlo. So there they are, sitting in a little diner in Monte Carlo, having have you any spare time to lay down a circuit? And Anthony Nage is trying to find spare time to be able to make an event for Louis Chiron. He hopes within the next 2 weeks. Nage found some time in April to host the race, and this gave birth to the Monaco Grand Prix, with a circuit all of us can easily remember. Originally, there wasn't enough money to invite the teams over, so it was every man for themselves from 1929. Chiron wasn't in it, but boy was it amazing. And there's the legendary circuit that it takes, and if you look at it for just 15 seconds, you'll have it in your memory, and you'll probably know what it is without needing the picture. Private owners with top-of-the-game Grand Prix cars came flocking to the Riviera for a race at such a romantic site, and they made it a spectacular Grand Prix. With this, Chiron and Nage made in excess of 12,000 euros from the first year. Inflated, that would have been the equivalent of, I think, $100,000. On the left is William Grover Williams and Georges Bouriano in Belgian Georges Bouriano in a yellow spare wheel Bugatti, fighting for position going through the last corner while one of the red cars retires. And in the middle is this amazing painting of Rudolf Caracciora's Mercedes-Benz SSK, René Dreyfus's Bugatti, and William Grover Williams's British Racing Green Bugatti exiting the legendary tunnel that they pass underneath in the Monaco circuit. And then there they are at is William Grover Williams approaching the Tabac corner, they are going past the harbor, which is where the circuit is located. And the reason for why Louis Chiron spent the year otherwise behind a desk when he earned this much money is unclear. However, he did purchase a used V12 Delage Grand Prix car for the Indianapolis 500, but he found himself outclassed by the Americans. So, he was looking at used cars to buy, and he found a Delage up for sale for, I think, 3,000 euros or something? Aha, the US hasn't thought of this, 12-cylinder cars. But things work a little bit differently. He came 7th in the race, but he was 26th fastest. 25 drivers outclassed him. 25 Americans. He felt extremely embarrassed and headed back to Europe. I'm getting out of here. I'm not hanging around anymore. So the arrow represents where Louis Chiron is. He's way back there. And in America, it's not skill, it's engine size. Those cars had like 5-liter engines. The Delage was a 2-liter car, so there was no way he could have won. But yeah. He made up for this by traveling back to Europe and off to San Sebastian to dominate the Spanish Grand Prix. He was also victorious in the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. It wasn't an official Grand Prix, but he took victory. So Louis Chiron brought out a spare wheel Bugatti and defeated all before him in his favorite track. He took victory there last year, and he's going to repeat it this year. Just like Albert Divo repeated his Targa Florio victory in both of those years. This car will never be beaten. And then on the other side, King of the Eiffel Mountains. At least for the time. Rudolf Caracciola, he'll eventually progress. I don't know. These successes had made Chiron an inflated millionaire. He entered the 1930 season as the man to beat. But surprisingly, the others found monumental ways to beat him on 3 occasions in that year. Second place, it's honorable, but after a while, it's redundant. And we are about to see this in the next few slides. It starts with his hometown. The success of last year saw the 1930 Monaco Grand Prix have entries from all over the continent. Chiron fancied a Monegasque flag on his Bugatti. And for the first time in his life, Chiron had locals cheering for him. There's the crowd roaring for Chiron as he passes by in the parade. The gift of cheering. How wonderful. Let's see if artistry can win races. It seemed like Louis would be on the top step of the podium, up until 4/5 distance. He refuels for 50 seconds, no problem there, but Jewish racing driver René Dreyfus roars by 10 seconds later with no ambition of refueling. And if you paid attention to the paintings I showed you earlier, René Dreyfus was in one of them, so that meant that he had more experience of Monte Carlo at the time than Louis Chiron did. So, Louis Chiron was passed by a Jewish racing driver. What? And René Dreyfus just goes, "Respect minority people." And there's that painting I might have showed you earlier. Wow! Indy defeats manufacturer in the same car. Well, that's definitely awesome. But if René Dreyfus could win, just about anybody could win, because 3 in 4 people had Bugatti Type 35s, which meant Louis Chiron was outclassed by just about anybody. Anyway, this continued at the Targa Florio. Chiron raced the Type 35B, while young hotshot Achille Varzi, also in a car from 1924, the Alfa P2, goes against him. It's the clash of the mid-1920s. But with the help of his smooth racing style, Varzi broke all existing records, defeating Chiron and his teammate Caberto Canelli by almost 5 minutes. How far ahead am I? Achille Varzi is amazing young driver. He was only 26 at the time, but his smooth driving style propelled him to 4 victories in 1929 and 5 in 1930. Driver of the Year twice in a row. Just incredible racer. And Louis Chiron received an incoming message from Ettore Bugatti. Push your engine as hard as you have to. And this was the loss that led to the retirement of the Bugatti Type 35, because it won the Targa Florio 5 times, and they didn't stop using it until it lost the Targa Florio. And that is what happened here. Yeah. These losses culminated in the Roman Colosseum during a Grand Prix in that city. Maserati's new 26M chassis was driven by Luigi Arcangeli. After Chiron's car failed on lap 2, he took over his teammate Guy Bouriat's car in hot pursuit of the Italians. Putting the 3-year-old car to the limit, he eventually caught up to the Maserati's rear bumper on the last lap. But he was denied yet again. So, I guess, Arcangeli put his car to the limit simply because he was an Italian and an Italian should win Italian races. But Louis Chiron just goes, I deserve to win way more than you do. And, he came quite literally up to his bumper. He comes, and as a result, because of Luigi Arcangeli's not cooperative personality, Louis Chiron lost the event by 2 seconds. He could have won, but he didn't. 3 losses in less than 2 months. Chiron redeemed himself for these by winning the European Grand Prix at Spa over Bouriat by a minute. So, yeah, there's Louis Chiron talking to his teammate Guy Bouriat. Guy, I lost 3 times this year. You don't know that. You don't have no idea at all what that's like. Please? And then Guy Bouriat just says, fine, you can win. But remember, I was the dominant racer. Yeah, Guy Bouriat was the leader for more than 3/4 of the time, but he gave the victory to Louis Chiron to make him feel better. But it was then that he realized, what the heck is going on with Grand Prix racing? Chiron noticed a huge problem. Racing authority was French, and the events they called international were hardly even multinational. French or Spanish races had French teams, and French racers. Races that Italians considered to be continental were really only national. Italian drivers avoided French races, and French racers avoided Italian events. Louis Chiron was the only... In 1928, Louis Chiron was the only man in Europe to cross the border, to cross the Italian-French border. it's insane. So, there's the Coppa Ciano, Coppa Acerbo, Monza Grand Prix. Very big races, but Louis Chiron did not consider them to be major at all. And Grand Prix races, they were not international, only French. He decided to address it. So Chiron spent the remainder of the season persuading Bartolomeo Costantini, Bugatti's manager, Alfieri Maserati, and Nicola Romeo to cross the borders more often, especially for Grand Prix races. So Chiron is talking to Alfieri Maserati and Nicola Romeo here. These races are called international. Let's make that claim true. Sounds logical. Yes. And, I guess Nicola Romeo and Alfieri Maserati take into consideration his statement and end up doing it. Louis' campaign helped Grand Prix racing look noticeably different in 1931. Eventually, it will completely transform by 1932, but more of that later. All Grand Prix were truly international, just like what Chiron wanted. It also saw the introduction to the AIACR European Championship. The non-approved races weren't finished adapting into this international status, however. But for 1931, Bartolomeo Costantini had given Louis Chiron a surprise. Costantini had hired Europe's finest racer, Achille Varzi, as Chiron's Italian teammate on Bugatti. Artistry meets smoothness. So, here we are. Chiron and Achille Varzi unite! So, Europe's finest racers racing together. You'd expect there to be a rivalry like Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, but no. They actually ended up being the best of friends, as I'll show you. With the help of their talents and the new twin camshaft 180 brake horsepower Type 51, the two were unstoppable. They both won the two non-approved / championship races. Varzi took the Tunis Grand Prix in Carthage and the Alessandria circuit in Italy, while Chiron won at Czechoslovakia and, yes indeed, his hometown. So this is the Bugatti Type 51, but it's new underneath the hood, but it looks the same as an old Type 35. Because Alfa Romeo withdrew due to problems with their new Monza chassis, the Monaco Grand Prix was a chance for Louis Chiron to seek revenge against Maserati. Rome Grand Prix before. Louis was in a new and more powerful car, while Luigi Fagioli was in the same 26M chassis as last year. This meant Chiron could really put his foot down and beat Maserati by 2 laps, taking the checkered flag. At long last, Chiron! As Jean Bugatti was amazed by what happened, because I think he fainted. I think that's what happened. And there's the official program. Everyone just cheering wild cheers for Louis Chiron. It was absolutely crazy. In August, he lost 3 races in a row. The German Grand Prix lost to Rudolf Caracciola, the Coppa Ciano to Tazio Nuvolari, and the Coppa Acerbo to Giuseppe Campari. Louis Chiron's biography, Part 3. So, we last left off with Louis Chiron losing 3 races in a row. He lost the German Grand Prix to Rudolf Caracciola, the Coppa Ciano to Tazio Nuvolari, and the Coppa Acerbo to Giuseppe Campari. These were all redeemed by winning at Czechoslovakia when all the other major competitors struck problems. Even his Bugatti counterparts, so he was chased by locals, or German drivers. So he was the only one who had the fine Grand Prix equipment. So it's agile, light, and reliable. That's something Louis Chiron established after winning the Maserati Grand Prix. The European Championship required for 2 drivers to share 1 car over the course of 10 hours. Chiron and Varzi immediately teamed up for all 3 Grand Prix. The 2 of them would triumphantly win the French Grand Prix by 3 laps over the Italians. So, there you can see, you might remember this actually from Grand Prix 80th Anniversary Episode 2, a flashback to the French Grand Prix of this year. Achille Varzi is doing very well while Luigi Fagioli tries to catch up to him, and he makes a mistake, and puts him out of the race. And Luigi Fagioli just has gifted insight, I guess, and thinking, They have their mistakes. I can feel it. I don't know. He probably is predicting the future here. But they took a brilliant victory in the French Grand Prix. And while the two may have been fifth in the championship overall, and behind their French partners Devo and Bouriat, they were undoubtedly the fastest. With these successes, Chiron was once again voted Driver of the Year for 1931. It was actually a tie between Louis Chiron and Achille Varzi, but they decided to give a little bit of a fairness act by giving Louis Chiron Driver of the Year award, because Varzi was winner of the award in the 2 years before, 1929 and 1930. It had to be Chiron. Varzi can't be Driver of the Year 3 years in a row. However, life started to change for Louis Chiron and indeed Ettore Bugatti in 1932. The Molsheim men were now in a state of losing to their arch-nemesis, Alfa Romeo. At Chiron's hometown, Alfa triumphed while Chiron nearly crashed into the harbor, but managed to save it. Here's a painting of the scene. Heinrich Joachim von Morgan and some other Bugatti drivers chase after the Alfa Romeo Monza that Nuvolari is using and Louis Chiron was originally following him, but then he crashes, and there was no protection in the day, so he could have fallen into the dock, like Paul Hawkins did in 1965. I'm lucky I could have broken my leg. And then, of course, and there goes Nuvolari, off on his way to victory, presumably. To make matters quite a lot worse, Alfa Romeo commissioned a deadly weapon, the Tipo B, or P3. This car clearly had triumph in its figurative DNA. All three senior Alfa drivers vanquished all before them in the championship, while Chiron managed fifth, behind the independent Jew René Dreyfus. So, Louis Chiron raced for the works team, and the championship wasn't exactly promising for him, but after Albert Devo withdrew from the title, Chiron was all that was left of Bugatti, and Achille Varzi was doing absolutely horrible in the championship, so Bugatti were doing terrible in the title. Couldn't go any further than fourth place in the races, at least of the championship. And when an Alfa P3 passed him at the Nürburgring, he said, "What an unbelievably fast car!" And then the three words that confirmed the next 3 years of his life: "I want one." He now has been convinced it's been such an amazing car, he wants one. For most of the year, Chiron couldn't place any higher than third in the races, and that happened only twice. However, he brought Bugatti back to victorious ways at Czechoslovakia once again, ahead of Maserati's 3-liter car. So there's Chiron's quote, which has now confirmed that he will be doing something unexpected. Very nice. Let's give Bugatti a good send-off. So yes, Louis Chiron decided to go out in style with Bugatti by taking victory at Masaryk Grand Prix, but he raced in a couple more races, so his absolute final race with Bugatti wasn't the most romantic outcome ever, but, you know, no regrets. That's right, Bugatti's most successful racer was leaving Molsheim. After 6 years, Chiron did one last thing to prove he would always be a Bugatti supporter, which was finish off with a local victory in Nice, France, and one more at Dieppe. Louis and Ettore parting ways shocked Europe when it happened, but he did so. And the way it shocked him was because it was a partnership that had lasted for 6 years, from the time when Chiron was a reserve driver for them all the way up to the point where he is like their savior in motor racing. Wishing you the best of luck in the future, Ettore. Thanks, Louis, and to you too. I mean, so many newspapers, I can't keep count of how many newspapers interviewed Chiron after he left Bugatti, but it was a big change for motorsport. But Chiron's plan for 1933 was to team up with his close friend Rudolf Caracciola, who had also been bummed out of a team due to Alfa Romeo's withdrawal, and together formed Scuderia CC. They were considered They were considered dangerous contenders with the upgraded Alfa Monzas they used for Grand Prix racing, and also participating in sports car racing and hill climbs. I think you might remember this from episode 15 of Grand Prix 80th Anniversary, why Caracciolo deserved to win the title in that year. A force to be reckoned with at Spa, Monaco, Monza, Le Mans, Mille, everywhere. I mean, so, these two would form a private team, but they would be like the fastest drivers in Europe with them. And this was the kind of car they used. Mostly, you can tell it's sort of Rudolf Caracciolo's sort of style, because it's white. But Louis Chiron, there's a bit of Louis Chiron at the front of it, and in other parts of it. But this was to become one of the most brilliant ideas that never happened for the time. After a perilous, nearly fatal crash for Rudolf Caracciolo at Chiron's hometown, the Germans saw he had a fractured thigh and bad facial injuries. Caracciolo was out for the season. This meant Chiron was on his own. And this is another one of those pictures I took from episode 15. So Rudolf Caracciolo steers against the wind current, and then he crashes into the barrier very hard indeed, which results in heavy injuries. So just before he crashes, he swears, and then it goes dark for him. Louis Chiron, who is following him, is like, "No, that can't be Rudy, is it?" He's praying that it's not Rudolf Caracciolo, but it is. Chiron drove a lustless race while Varzi and Tazio Nuvolari put on the heck of a show. Chiron finished 4th, uncompetitive. The next few months proved to be lustless for the Monegasque without a partner. This led fans into believing he was a one-make man. So here are a few die-hard Grand Prix racing fans at the time who's like, Chiron looks pretty bored down there. And then someone else speculates, maybe he misses Bugatti or something. And all he is doing is just watching Tazio Nuvolari and Achille Varzi go at it, and put on quite a big show, and multiple times. However, he could prove them wrong. Chiron turned up for a local but continental race at Marseille, now racing for Enzo Ferrari, driving the car he wanted, the Tipo B, or P3. After Tazio Nuvolari, now racing for Maserati, had lost an axle joint, Chiron and his teammate Fagioli cruised on to a 1-2 finish in the Riviera. So, Nuvolari gave up on the Alfa Romeo Monzas because they were letting him down on the major races, so he switched over to Maserati with their new 8cm car. And Louis Chiron sort of switched places with him. Out with Nuvolari, in with the P3, and Louis Chiron and Luigi Fagioli come to a 1-2 at Miramas. And Chiron just goes, memory lane. And that's a reference to the fact that Louis Chiron, as a teenager learning how to drive, he grew up learning how to be a race car driver. He gained his driving experience at Miramas. So, he spent the past decade learning how to be a proper race car driver here. So he knows this track better than anybody else does. This was then followed with a 24-hour race at Spa-Francorchamps. He brought out a 2.3-liter sports Alfa Romeo for the race, and took victory with the help of sports car legend Luigi Chinetti. So, Louis Chiron's in the pits, while Luigi Chinetti is doing... Luigi Chinetti, yeah, I think that's what it is. Or Chinetti. Luigi Chinetti, yes, that's what it is. Luigi Chinetti is doing his shift for the day, and doing his shift for the next 5 hours, and he 15 hours into the race in a 5-lap lead. Doing very well, and that happens over the course of 15 hours. And Chiron to Chinetti, sending a message to Chinetti as he passes the pit, keep up the good work. To make him feel even better, he took a 3rd consecutive victory at Czechoslovakia. And to finish off the year, he took an invincible victory in his all-time favorite circuit, Lazarti. He he hadn't been there for... He hadn't been at that track for 4 years, and you could tell how much he missed those Spanish people, and the Spanish people missed Louis Chiron just as much too. Ever since winning the Spanish Grand Prix in 1928, the Spanish clearly showed that their favorite racing driver were Louis Chiron, and Louis Chiron shows his affection too. You don't know how much I've missed you guys. It's great to be back. After 4 years. However, 1934 saw a couple of new kids on the block from Germany, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union. Bugatti was out of the question for success as a result. This meant Chiron was joined by Achille Varzi and Alfa Romeo for 1934. That was... So, here we are, Louis Chiron and Achille Varzi. They were best friends on Bugatti, and because Bugatti were now losing out in the quest for success, Achille Varzi joined Louis Chiron once again. Chiron and Varzi reunite, using the best European race car that's out there at the moment, the Alfa Romeo P3. Chiron was given the nickname Le Vieux Renard, which was French for the old fox, a fast racer in the old stuff. He, Varzi, and the 24-year-old Guy Moll did fantastic at the beginning of the season, taking a 1-2-3 finish at the Tripoli Grand Prix. And at Louis Chiron's hometown, I couldn't fit this, but at Louis Chiron's hometown, Chiron came second, while the fantastic young racing driver Guy Moll took a sensational victory in his debut for the Ferrari team. So, they took a 1-2-3 finish, but the race in particular was pretty boring. So they're all just going, Stuttgart, Zwickau, where the hell are you? We need competition. Without you, it's just us winning the races. Bugatti's winning the race would actually be a miracle. And because Tazio Nuvolari is doing his best impression of every man for himself, he can't defeat them either with his Maserati or Bugatti. So, yeah. When the Italians came to Germany, it wasn't as easy. At the Eiffelrennen, Mercedes-Benz made their first appearance against Auto Union. Manfred von Braukitsch and Heinz Stuck dominated the race, with Chiron in third. So yes, it's the first duel against both Silver Arrow's cars. Mercedes-Benz were not supposed to be there because they originally had their cars painted white, but because they were over the weight limit, they took off the white coat of paint and exposed the silver coat, which meant they were underweight, which meant they could race. And this put on quite a big show. Mercedes-Benz going against Auto Union for the very first time, and Louis Chiron, all Louis Chiron's doing is just watching it all happen. He's just, damn it, Adolf Hitler! Why? Why don't you give us a chance? That's a good question, though. You really should be able to consider it. In the French Grand Prix at Montlhéry, Chiron exacted his revenge in a monumental victory over them. Less than halfway through, all Mercedes-Benz cars were broken. On lap 32, Heinz Stuck's engine blew up. This meant Chiron and Varzi cruised on to a 1-2 finish on the NASCAR track of Europe. It was the Italians proving to the Germans that they may have had some of the finest racing equipment that was out there, but they still needed a lot. But a lot of it still hadn't quite come out of the workshop yet. So there's Heinz Stuck warning them, one day we will be rulers, which is going to happen, if you haven't seen my Grand Prix 80th anniversary. And there's Chiron and Varzi, just like old times. And so here in this computer-generated image on the left, Louis Chiron is where the arrow is pointing, sitting way over there. However, after a remake of the Eiffelrennen, which is the German Grand Prix 1934, only the two constructors, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, swap around, Chiron's performance gave the first indication to his downfall. For the rest of the season, the Monegasque couldn't do any better than 5th at the Swiss Grand Prix. Not even at San Sebastian, where he finished 10th, a full lap off. Louis Chiron, you let us down! Why, even Tazio Nuvolari and his Bugatti came in 3rd place. That's just crazy. And Louis Chiron saw distressed while Fargioli and Caracciola cruise on to a 1-2 finish. Louis Chiron's out in the pits going, oh dear, I've lost my reputation. I mean, Tazio Nuvolari, who's doing an everyman for himself campaign, who's doing everyman for himself for 1934, he's racing his privately owned Bugatti, and he comes 3rd. That's just wrong. They really had to fix that. As 1935 came around, Chiron realized he no longer possessed victory. 2nd was as high as he could get. Also, Achille Varzi was convinced the Germans were brilliant, so he left for Auto Union. However, Chiron was joined by the legend Tazio Nuvolari and René Dreyfus for 1935. 3 very different legendary drivers, all racing together. From left to right, artistry, fearlessness, and Judaism all racing together. Who could have ever imagined that? So, part 4 of Louis Chiron's biography. We last left off with Louis Chiron realizing he no longer possessed victory, and his best friend was no longer driving alongside him. And Nuvolari and René Dreyfus joined him in the quest for defeating the Germans with the Alfa Romeo P3. And we continue into the 1935 season. Now, if you've seen Grand Prix 80th Anniversary before, you'll probably know what has happened. But if you haven't, I'll tell you. Chiron started with 5th at his hometown, opening up to the championship. Then his wisdom earned him 2nd at the Avusrennen with the Ferrari Bimotor, 5.8 liter 2x8 ton car. It's like, take it. So Louis Chiron decided to use an excellent strategy that, like, if you go fast, your tires will explode. And Louis Chiron decided not to go fast after his tires exploded, so he only stopped once. He only needed to stop once, and therefore he came 2nd. So his lesson was to take it steady, not fast. And Luigi Fagioli, who won the race, is just saying, tell that to Achille Varzi, who takes it steady and fast. That's not the way you do it. However, he did possess victory at the Lorraine Grand Prix in June, but that coincided with the race with the Germans. I guess not. So Rudolf Caracciola is trying to talk to him. Louis, that car isn't fast anymore. Come join me in Stuttgart. Ugh. I don't know if this is a wise decision, though. Louis Chiron has great wisdom and artistic driving. And then, you might have seen this before, too, from episode 8. Chiron then took runner-ups in northern France races, and then 3rd at the Belgian Grand Prix. But that's where it became evident that he might not have enough strength to last a whole race. So this is the Ferrari pit after. So Louis Chiron's there on the left. He's collapsed because he was exhausted after the race. He's like, need air. That's my best impression of a breathless person. And René Dreyfus, who inhaled Mercedes-Benz special fuel, and he threw up on the track. So he was like, because I'm Jewish. I don't know, like, René Dreyfus was right behind a German car, and probably because he was Jewish, the German car sputtered oil on his face. and Attilio Marinani, who took over Rene Dreyfus's car, just says, "Is everything alright?" Well, all was not well in the Ferrari convoy at that time. After that, Chiron's Italian counterparts outpaced him in the major races. But then, Chiron and his partners dominated the Nice Grand Prix, just west of Chiron's hometown. The season then culminated with a podium at Czechoslovakia. So yes, this is a beautiful place they're here, being in Nice, New Villari. Do you come here often? Oh yes, I do. I know it like the back of my hand. And that's true. Just like Rudolf Caracciola knows the Nürburgring like the back of his hand, Chiron knows the south of France like the back of his hand. And this is a beautiful place to live in. And then at Czechoslovakia, he comes third, and he brings the legendary Alfa P3 to an honorable retirement, coming third after 3 years of service. I never thought it would actually end. And guess what's about to happen? The worst mistake of his life. However, it was in 1936 when Chiron took a turn for the worst. The old fox missed his old friend he never raced with, Rudolf Caracciola, and so Chiron made the terrible decision to join him at Mercedes-Benz. It seemed to be a good idea, at first. Now, this is a spoiler for Season 2, guys, but I'm sorry. Louis Chiron and Rudolf Caracciola. It's just so awesome that at last we will actually race together. We're so excited about that because they never raced together. Now it's about the time they do. This meant Chiron lost his old nickname and was now seen as a traitor to France. He was racing with the Germans, which meant that he no longer appeared in local races, only in the real big ones. Not even in races like the Dieppe Grand Prix or the Marne Grand Prix or races that happened in the south of France. The only time he ever raced in the south of France would be at the Monaco Grand Prix. This was accomplished with an awful car, the W25 Kurz, which is German for W25 for short. The wheelbase was shortened to fit the weight limit. We had to shorten it quite a lot, but it does have 450 horsepower, more than we had last time. Never mind the horsepower, because it was terribly unreliable. Chiron couldn't place any higher than 6th, and at the German Grand Prix it was all over. A high-speed crash on the Nürburgring meant he wounded his head and shoulders. The Monegasque retired from Grand Prix racing afterwards. No, not Louis! Rudolf Caracciola passes by, really disappointed by what happened. And then Louis Chiron thinks internally, "What have I done? I never should have said yes!" Which means, from now on, gray, silver, or anything related to silver is his least favorite color. He made a brief return for sports car racing at the French Grand Prix in 1937, but he was gone from racing altogether. And then, well, we all know what happens afterwards. So yes, Nazi Germany teams up with Italy, and Britain and France go to war together. No, Britain and France go to war with Nazi Germany and Italy. Eventually, it's all over on May 8th, 1945. The USSR, Britain, and America win the war, and France is freed. Louis Chiron is tempted to return to his old hobby, to restart his treasured career. And so, the synopsis. Grand Prix drivers at the time had two choices for sophisticated racing cars, the Alfetta or the Maserati 4CL. ERA was okay, but not as well. Same with Delahaye. Both Italian cars were pre-war voiturettes, which became the finest racing equipment available. Take your pick. The Alfa Romeo 158, made in 1938, introduced at the Copacciano 1938, invincible whenever used. It's only used by the works team, which means it appears a lot less common, but whenever it does appear, it is 100% guaranteed to lead the race. And this invincible trait they didn't even get the slightest experience of defeat until 1951. Or you could choose the Maserati 4CL, which was made in 1939 for the Tripoli Grand Prix. Popular choice among most people who can't afford to race for a team. They can purchase a 4CL and start their own team out of it. Really, some big choices for cars. You had to choose between two of them if you really wanted some really fine racing equipment. You could disagree, but your career would not be as good, though. Chiron, at age 46, decided to wait on the decision, and so he signed a contract with Talbot Lago, racing for them at the Saint-Cloud Grand Prix in Paris, coming second to Grand Prix racing's new savior, Raymond Sommer. So, Louis Chiron now races the Talbot Lago T26, which is I think it's a 1.5 liter supercharged Grand Prix car, and Raymond Sommer, who still races his Maserati 4CL privately without any team support. I know you well, Louis, but consider your age. Raymond Sommer takes 5 victories that year. Driver of the year, actually, for 1946. I know you well, Louis, consider your age. Louis replies, "Not yet, Raymond. I'm age 46, there's still a few years left of me." Chiron's age did interfere with his speed, though, so he decided to get a 4CL. And then, in September, the Italians reappeared, and Formula 1 was created, its inaugural race at Torino. Achille Varzi returned from the dark days of morphine, driving the Alfetta, dominating the race, while Louis Chiron was in 6th. It's been a long time, my Monaco friend. Yes, it has been, Achille. So, both of these people made terrible decisions in 1936, which led to the downfall of their career. But after the war, they returned to their former greatness. Achille Varzi returned to his lovable, smooth personality, and Louis Chiron returned to his wisdom, to his wise and artistic personality. Except his artistic partner, Ettore Bugatti, didn't exist anymore. It isn't the car, it's me. Chiron decided not to give up on the 4CL quite yet. In 1947, when Grand Épreuve races returned, which were now called Formula 1 Grand Prix races, Chiron used the 4CL for the F1 races. However, it let him down on all occasions. But it was at the Comminges Grand Prix in August where Chiron returned to a place he remembered very well. 21 years ago, in 1926, I took my first Grand Prix victory in a Bugatti Type 35 here in Saint-Gaudens. 21 years later, it is likely to be my last. Same location, with a Talbot Lago T26. Very different. But many people thought that Chiron would end his career in the same place he began it. But no, it wasn't. He also took second at the Reims Grand Prix, a continental race, and first at the French Grand Prix. Age 48, an international Formula 1 race won by Le Vieux Reynard, ahead of Henri Louveau in a 4CL. Ugh, that was stupid. Stupid bug getting in the way. It's really been 13 years since I was on the top step in an épreuve. Henri Louveau, who does remember that time, only he was like a man in his 20s. Yeah, it has been. And it was unbelievable to think that Chiron could win a Grand Prix race, a Formula 1 race. Because he was well past his prime, everyone thought that. But Chiron did, however, have to realize there were younger drivers out there. In 1938, there was Luigi Villoresi, Alberto Ascari, Jean-Pierre Emile, Prince Bira, Raymond Sommer, and many more fantastic racers younger than Chiron. Stupid bug. Get out of here. 48 years old. Very old for a racing driver. 1899. The 1800s is not a current century in racing driver age anymore. He's like the last surviving. He and Felipe Tanslam were the last two racing drivers to continue. He, along with Felipe Tanslam, were the only two racing drivers born in the 1800s who were still racing actively in Grand Prix racing. Chiron managed to come second in his hometown in 1948 to Giuseppe Farina's enhanced Maserati. But in Switzerland later that year, Chiron lost his best friend. Achille Varzi was practicing and had a horrific crash which killed him. Chiron was following him at that point, unable to explain how that happened. Now it is all done. Achille Varzi internally his dying thought. Now it's all done. Goodbye, Louis. And disappointing, Achille Varzi ends up being killed in a horrific crash. Age 44. He was fantastic, greatest man Chiron ever knew. Rest in peace, Achille Varzi. 1904 to 1948. This shocked young and old racing drivers all over the world. If a legendary veteran could get killed in a racing car, that meant anyone could be killed in the same way. A few Argentines named their own team in his honor in 1949, Scuderia Achille Varzi, which gave way to Juan Manuel Fangio's success. As you lap me again, Manuel, I consider your actions a meaningful act of honor. So, yeah, Chiron is now uncompetitive, and Juan Manuel Fangio has now become like a new person to look out for from Argentina, and he's really taken it into consideration. And like Varzi's personality, Louis Chiron's best friend Achille Varzi was dead, but his personality lived on in these Argentine racing drivers. But for the old fox, well, he was heartbroken without his best friend, and his equipment was unreliable. It seems to have crashed out of the blue on me, out of random, so I'm going to have to try again. Here we go. So we last left off with the French Grand Prix, which is a Formula 1 race at Reims-Gouy. Luigi Villoresi and the Argentine Maserati racers were out, but Prince Bira, in the fast stuff, is still going. I mean, he'd already established himself to be extremely fast, and he was now driving the latest Maserati out there, and Chiron was driving a terribly unreliable car. So he was unable to do it. Meanwhile, Prince Bira looked like he might finally take his first major Grand Prix victory after the course of 13 years. A small mistake that cost him 25 seconds gives Chiron the lead, surprisingly. But with the Siamese Prince Bira in a clearly better car, easily he'd get past. But no, Chiron held out to take victory. Le Vieux Reynard pulls off his last great triumph over the superiors. And you know, I don't know how long he held out on that E in yes, but it must have been like hours of just holding it out, because it was a huge miracle to take victory over the superior Grand Prix car. And it was like a legend would have been a legend in a bad car would have been easily defeated by a person who never won a race in a good car, but that is not what happened. Upon the arrival of the World Championship in 1950, Chiron decided to do something that he could have done all along his career, but didn't. Race for Maserati. He was partnered by Franco Roll. I mean, Maserati had been a fine racing team since 1929, and Chiron could have raced for them his entire life, but he never did. And this time he will, racing the Maserati 4CLT 48, which is nicknamed for the enhanced Maserati that was made in 1948. Why didn't I think of this before? Good question, old fox. Louis wasn't fast, but he was much happier with Maserati, since he finished races so much more often, which he said was accomplishment. At his hometown, he used every bit of strength he had to get to third place ahead of Raymond Sommer's Ferrari. So, Louis Chiron approaches Raymond Sommer at the famous corner over there, and Raymond Sommer obviously has a much more superior car. The Ferrari 500 is obviously a legendary racing car. Raymond Sommer just goes, "I thought I told you to consider your age. You're age 51. This will be my last great finish, Raymond." So Louis Chiron, he is in a good racing car, but he is not using it. He's not using its full potential like the younger drivers are. And he managed to get a podium, which was his last major podium. But after that, Le Vieux Reynard finally considered his age, and gradually faded out of racing from 1951 to 1955. He decided his retirement would be at his hometown. So he drove a Lancia D50 to 6th place to end a legendary story. So, to finish off this little story in French, au revoir, Louis Chiron. That's the crowd. Chiron responds, "Merci beaucoup pour une telle carrière merveilleuse." Or, in English, "Thank you very much for a wonderful career." And he finished off the career with a legendary car, the Lancia D50. And that's pretty much it for Louis Chiron's biography. Bugatti Chiron analysis, stage 2. Time for the analysis of the actual car. Finishing off the biography, for the rest of his life, Louis Chiron was the General Commissioner of the Monaco Grand Prix, and he would be until he died in 1979. So, I decided to turn off the music because I don't think this car deserves it, and you'll see why later on. First of all, we look at the styling. It looks epic, definitely, but there's that problem again. It's been made to look aerodynamic. And that is where you see the modern-day Bugatti personality shining through. It's clearly visible that there is a channel for the air to pass into the car as it travels along. And it's here in multiple places. And also, there are some low-density door mirrors, or door mirrors that, I don't know, don't take up so much space like normal, but because they would want to make sure it's aerodynamic. And now let's see the car's face. The headlights obviously look like they're going to attack you, and that's not what a Bugatti should be. This will mislead people into thinking you'll need to be Bernd Drossmeyer to drive it. Just look at this. It's just trying to threaten you, really. I mean, the grille, it's reminiscent of Bugatti's past, but the headlights just give away the modern-day personality. This isn't an attack dog, Volkswagen. Even New Volare would be scared of this. But to be honest, I have seen some people speculate that what I'm showing you isn't actually what it looks like. They say the Chiron looks like this. And this is what I say will come out very different in styling, and a much different air hood. But similar story on the density of the door mirrors, and yeah. But that is what some people speculate is what it looks like. That is the 2016 model, but Bugatti aren't putting it into production next year, so I'm not entirely sure on that one. I am entirely sure on the one I'm showing you. Next, we look at the interior. The seats are lined with silver, which probably is meant to keep the legs comfortable. This can relate to the no stereo dashboard, which appears to be made of carbon. I mean, look at this. It's pretty no-nonsense. I mean, they removed the stereo that you could listen to, even in the Super Sport Bugatti Veyron. And there's silver on the seat, and I'm about to show you what flaw this is about to have. Yeah. As a matter of fact, most of the interior's outline is made of silver. The steering wheel, the glove box, it's been outlined with it, and the doors, outlined with silver as well. And the gear lever and the stereo are lined with silver as well. Passenger seat, same thing as the driver's seat. Now, silver, this doesn't translate very well into Chiron's greatness. Silver is the color of Germany, which began his downfall. And that is what really disturbs me a lot. But you can make up for this, because the rest is made of calfskin, and the calfskin can be any color from red to blue, which is the buyer's business to choose. Because just like a normal... all your basic colors are really available in choosing the color of the leather, or calfskin, whatever it's called, because that's what I read it to be. It could be red, yellow, green, or blue. But absolutely no black or gray interior. That's available, but that's only for people who do not know what this car is named after. It's meant for people who think it's named after that half-human, half-horse person named Chiron, which it isn't. Blue would be the most likely option for you to choose if you know who he is, which I do. Alright. The original Bugatti Veyron had 987 horsepower. Unbelievable when we first heard of it, right? Well, we've grown accustomed to how much that had. The Chiron's engine will generate 1,500 horses from its 18 cylinders. This is quite something. It's really genuinely remarkable to think it will generate that much power. I mean, to be honest, it is one of the most powerful engines ever made. The second most powerful, actually, to the SSC Tuatara. Do not say that is impossible, because just like the Veyron, we'll grow accustomed to what this car has. I've also heard that all of the horsepower in the Lamborghini engine that the Chiron has will be electrically turbocharged by Audi. You sure? So, this is the kind of electric turbocharger that Audi make in their V6 engines. It has that little turbocharging system, and they're going to make 6 of them, because it's a bi-turbo, so there's 2 of them in a 6-cylinder car, but this is an 18-cylinder car, and so they're going to need 6 of these. Yeah. The purpose of it is so that none of the horses are gone to waste. And this is pretty much the electric turbocharger processor inside the engine. It's a bit complicated, isn't it? I'd say so. But how big is the engine? I haven't seen anything confirm it, but here's my theory. Veyron had, at most, 1,001 horsepower from an 8-liter engine, 125.1 brake horsepower per liter. I know it said it had 987 horsepower, but some sources, not every engine was the same. Most engines said 987, but some special edition engines could get it to 1,001. And so it was 7,993 cubic centimeters, or 8 liters in English. So that is what the back of that car is. I don't believe people saying the Chiron has 8 liters either. It would be reasonable if it had maybe 145 horsepower per liter or something. They obviously don't want to increase they obviously want to increase the output, I'm sorry. And with 1,500 horsepower, as far as I can guess, It's got to be a 10.3-liter W18 engine. I'm very sorry if this video was a video for you to get away from all your math class distractions. I'm genuinely sorry if you came to this video to not see a single math equation, but I'm showing you one right now. Formula is HP slash HPPL, or horsepower divided by horsepower per liter, makes size. 1500 divided by 145.2, or 1500 horsepower divided by 145 HPPL is the equivalent of 10,331 cubic centimeters, or 10.3 liters. If my claim is true, then that means the Chiron will have the largest engine among any current production car by almost 2 liters. So, a bit difficult to compare the back of both Veyrons. It's just like, the size of this engine is bigger than the Veyron's was, and it is slightly observable by this. It's bigger by about 240 cubic centimeters, and bigger by about, 2.5, it's about 2.5 liters bigger, or 2.3 liters bigger. Sorry everybody, I was thinking about it by cubic centimeters. I'm not a math fool. But it definitely looks, the engine looks bigger, obviously. And that is how big it probably is. Now, I'm sure all of you came to watch this video just to see how fast this car can go. Well, the current record is held by the Hennessy Venom GT at 271 miles per hour. The Bugatti Chiron is able to accomplish 17 more than that, 288 at tops. Because of this, we're looking at the aerodynamics again. The front hood is shaped to give the airflow a smoother path over the car. As you can see, it's designed specifically with the aerodynamics in mind. Also, there is, just as I showed you earlier, multiple ducts for the air to pass into the car. Over here. It's pretty obvious that aerodynamics is just visible in every way. And also those low density door mirrors. Adding to that, there is not a single dent in the bodywork at all. It's very smooth, much like a Varzi. It doesn't show the personality of Louis Chiron, since he was an artistic driver. And, yes, this is definitely the smoothest door I've ever seen. There. And, this here, definitely, looking little arches that surround the engine. Very smooth, very carefully detailed. Well, that is, at least that's one good thing about this car, is that the smoothness of the styling is pretty carefully detailed, which then again expresses Bugatti's personality that they used to have. But even just reaching 288 miles an hour has a long procedure. Number one, you gotta turn off all theoretic limiters, such as the speed limiter, which probably limits it to 260 or something. Keep side windows closed, next you gotta go to Florida, south of Florida. Go to Cape Canaveral, which has the longest runway in the whole world, famous for where the space shuttle landed up until its retirement. And wait until the air is on its absolute thinnest to even come close to reaching 288. This also has to be on a lovely day. I mean, you wouldn't want to reach 288 miles an hour on a cloudy day, would you? It'd be best if it was sunny. Volkswagen's test track will get you to 267, but can it get you to 21 miles an hour faster? James May only proved that much. You're going to have to come here to go any further. And of course, an unsung part of the procedure, to make the car lighter. The Supersport Veyron had 1,200 horsepower under its bonnet, while weighing 1.838 tons, or 1,888 kilograms. Power-to-weight ratio was 653 horsepower per ton. Still pretty hard to consider. Most cars don't even have 650 horsepower. Yeah. Because there are things like the Corvette ZR1 who have 600 horsepower given the weight. But that's staggering. Can it get any higher with the Chiron, though? When you add 300 horsepower to the engine, the power-to-weight ratio would obviously be increased too. Bugatti say it's more than 800 bhp per ton, but we now take lightness into consideration. I'm thinking logically that the Chiron will be lightened by 100 kilograms, which means it'll weigh 1,738 kilograms. For those of you who loathe math, I'm extremely sorry if we return to another math equation. So the ratio of this is power to weight. And so 1,500 horsepower divided by 1,738 kilograms is the equivalent of 863 brake horsepower per ton. So that is increasing it by 310 horsepower. So they've increased more horsepower in the ratio than they did overall in the car together. That doesn't make much sense. 863 brake horsepower per ton means it's going to be among some of the most powerful bi-ratio cars in the world. There aren't many cars I can think of that have more, such as this, or this, which has 575 horsepower. Quite insane, isn't it? Both of these cars are absolutely extreme, but those are all I know that have more HPPT than the Bugatti Chiron. That's pretty much it. Of course, you'd probably wonder how quick this thing gets to certain speeds. That's where it's about to break yet another record. Bugatti say the Chiron can reach 60 miles an hour in 2 seconds flat. That's from now to now. And that's just about believable, given the horsepower addition, and weight loss, and the four-wheel drive system. At that rate, it'll reach 100 miles an hour in only 4 seconds. It's about the same as the 0 to 60 of the BMW M3 E92. BMW M3 is quick to 60 miles an hour, but the Bugatti Chiron is just as quick to 100 miles an hour. And so at that rate, you'll be, in only 10 seconds, you'll be driving 130. You'll be driving at the speed of 140. It's already been, it's already been 4 sets of 10 seconds in this video clip. So that means they'll probably reach 200 by then. But just because the Porsche 918 can go from 0 to 60 just half of a second slower, it doesn't mean the Chiron will lose in the quarter mile. Massive clue here is that the Porsche weighs 101 kilograms less than the Chiron does. It's all down to you. Louis Chiron, who sports the color of blue and France, and has twice as much power but it's extremely heavy. Or Rudolf Caracciola fancying silver and is from Germany. It has half as much power with only 875 bhp. Now I know I'm saying only for that, but compared to the Chiron I can say only. 875 bhp, but still, it's a lot lighter. So it's all down to you for the choice of which car you think is going to win. That probably was Bugatti's intention. Because Germany already have the acceleration record, and those bloody Germans caused Louis Chiron's downfall, they will successfully defeat their owner's country. Of course, they already messed up on the inside, though. I mean, you know, the acceleration seems to be fine, but the interior, I don't really want to look at it. It's a terrible mess up. I wish I could drive it had there not been any silver lining my knees when I sit down. It's a bit disappointing. And what will be the price of all this? Well, look below. It is $2.5 million. Only 3 cars are more expensive than that. It's $700,000 more expensive than the Bugatti Veyron Supersport was. costing at $1.8 million. Well, the original Bugatti Veyron was $1.8 million, and then the Chiron increased to $2 million, and the Veyron Supersport was $2 million. $2.5 million is what the Chiron is. So it's a really expensive car. You're gonna need to be a multi-millionaire, at least $5 million to be even able to afford it. I'd love to give you a longer analysis of the car, but I don't know what its driving style is or anything else of that sort. I can only tell you what I've just shown. So, let's conclude. Does the Chiron live up to its expectations? So the Veyron's object was to be spectacular for its time. To be able to do something that everyone believes is impossible at first, but show that the impossible is possible, and they got an A+ on that, a straight A. Can Bugatti get another straight A with this? I don't exactly think so. The objective for the Chiron was to be artistic with this car and go a little further, because they named it after a high-profile racer. They're under huge pressure to be able to go for that, and I don't feel like they've done that. Maybe they could have considered a better name for it, which I'm about to show you. To be honest, it doesn't, because being a successor to a car we can all say is a spectacular one and had a lot of requirements. The bold choice of naming it after their greatest racer, Louis Chiron, meant it had to evoke his artistic personality. It's a big responsibility naming a car after a legend that you see there. Because Pierre Veyron wasn't much of a legend, it was more of a person who raced for Bugatti, but that's it. The car looks epic, but that isn't Louis Chiron's type. And when you sit down, you'll be constantly reminded that the Monegasque raced for the Germans, which led to his downfall. At least the exterior color of the car is available in blue, but the silver in the inside of the car is just everywhere. You can't get away from it. You'll have to pay full concentration to the road, as long as it's not a cloudy day. However, it's an awesome car for aerodynamics and great smoothness, and that shows it was designed by an artistic person. Then again, smooth is the personality of Chiron's friend Achille Varzi, so another one gone. It was, like, the aerodynamics were designed in great detail, which is a good thing, but the rest of it seems to evoke Achille Varzi rather than Louis Chiron. You've got the wrong legend. Most other things are destined towards records. Records such as engine size among current production cars, top speed, and acceleration. Chiron never set his objectives toward records, even though he was a fantastic racer. So, it's now the quickest production car in the world. It's going to be the fastest. It's going to be the world's fastest production car. And the largest engine with 10.3 liters. Unbelievable to think about that, but, you know, that's not who Louis Chiron was. Louis Chiron was a fast person, but he wasn't fast in this kind of way. You know, it's different. None of that is bad or anything of the sort. It's just that the name Louis Chiron doesn't belong on the fastest production car. Volkswagen possibly made a small mistake with the namesake and intended to name it after Achille Varzi. So, if it was called the Bugatti Varzi, that would have been a much more appropriate name, because Varzi was destined toward records ever since he began in 1929. I mean, nobody would have anticipated Varzi to be such a sensational racer. And in his first 2 years of driving, he went from Tazio Nuvolare's sidekick to being Europe's all-time fastest racing driver. And this car deserves to be named after Achille Varzi, all things considered. And it's possible that because of this, Bugatti have learned their lesson. By naming it after their greatest racer, it's possible that Bugatti have decided that the Chiron will be the last speed-intended car that they'll make. So, after the Chiron project is over, they'll probably stop targeting speed as their priority. So the record Bugatti that all of you guys remember was born in 1989, and it's probably going to disappear in the 2020s. So if the Bugatti Chiron isn't as artistic as I hoped it to be, then not all hope is lost with the Bugatti Gangloff, which is the spiritual successor to the Type 57. If it goes into production, I'm going to make a video on it. If not, I'll just leave it on standby. But this is definitely it already does look much better. The engine's in the front. The car's is even more detailed than the Chiron is, even by observation. This is the artistic Bugatti that I remember, not the speed Bugatti. This is much better. Right, I'm sorry, the picture wasn't loading for some reason, but here it is. The Chiron will make its debut at the Geneva Motor Show next year. The showcases for all great upcoming cars. A DJ from the Netherlands named Afrojack has already ordered one. Guess he's excited for it too. A person who also owns a Bugatti Veyron. Damn right he's psyched for this one. He's a diehard Bugatti fan, at least. The record Bugatti fan. The artistic Bugatti's vanquished into darkness. Until the Gangloff comes into production, if it does. After analyzing the car, I'm only half as excited about it as I was before I made this video. But the main question remains, is this supercar worthy of being the next page in Bugatti's history? So we return back to that question we had about an hour and a half ago. Is it time to turn the page in Bugatti's history, or are we staying on this? Or are we staying put? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button or the subscribe button, and I will see you again next time I do a car review. See you guys around. This is Johannes Lacroix signing out.